Om Danur Grihitva Upanishadam Mahastram Sharam Yupasanashita Sanjayita Ayamya Tad Bhavakatena Chetasa Laksham Tadevaksharam Somya Viddi. Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. Taking as bow that mighty weapon furnished by the Upanishads and other non-dual scriptures of India, fasten to it the arrow of mind, made sharp by thoughts on reality alone. Then drawing full strength, O student, release and penetrate the mark, that imperishable Brahman. Om Satyena, Om Satyena Labhyastapassa Hyesa Atma Samyagyanena Brahmacharyena Nityam Antaha Sharirehi Jyotir Mayohi Shubraha Yam Pashanti Atayaha Kshina Doshaha. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. The Atman, the indivisible self in all beings and all things, is realized by knowledge, by moderation, by austerity, and by veracity, all of these constantly cultivated. When mental impurities dissolve due to this practice, then the seer beholds it everywhere, existing in everything, even here, in this very mind and body. Om peace, peace, peace. Om Sahana, Om Sahana Vavatu, Sahano Bhunaktu, Sahaviryam Karva Vahai, Tejasvi Navaditamastu Ma Vidveshovahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May Brahman, the reality, protect us. May Brahman sustain us. May Brahman illumine our thinking consciousness. May we not find fault with each other, with the world, or with the teachings. And may what we study be a source of inspiration to us eternally. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om. Om Namo Narayanaya. Salutations to all beings. We are together here on our usual Sunday afternoon class, not only to reclaim Sundays for a divine regimen, as used to be the case even here in America prior to a more recent age and of forgetfulness, but we extend the word religion into the realm of Dharma, so that beyond morality and immorality, which is good to get beyond, we get into this teaching that reflects the highest truth, called Dharma. And in this particular class, this is the second in a series of 3, called Mantra, Karma, and Purification. Last week we looked into the mantra quite extensively, but nowhere near as extensively as we could have. I have a good 9 or 10 charts such as these, which have different teachings on the mantra, like 21 steps of mantra practice that I didn't bring out. But today we want to focus more on this principle, albeit a relative principle, of karma. We don't really believe of God, in God as a judge in India. There are gods, you might say, that judge or look on upon what people do. A pantheon, they're called, but these are of course powers inside one's own mind, as everything is in Indian teaching. All is a projection of the mind, these mind-only schools. We've been trying to get that idea across or out into the American mind and thinking process for years. A different way of looking at it than a creation theory or a Big Bang theory, because in between the rock and the hard place of those two, there's these truths that Brahman or divine reality, call it God or Allah, is not a creator, that nature does all the creating. So there's some other forces that, like, say, the Word, as Jesus told John, that are involved in this, what we would call a projection project and a withdrawal concept. So we couldn't really pin the Appalachian creator on divine reality. It wouldn't work. That's why Swami Vivekananda said Brahman is a create. So it would be not involved in the creation. That really solves a lot of problems for people when they don't drag God into their comfort zones, number one, or blame God for their sufferings and their karma, number two, and on and on. Then it just pretty much places the whole matter back into our own hands. That is, we bound ourselves, and we ourselves must free ourselves. And that's a very healthy outlook to take. Yes, you can take help from divine powers within, but you have to reach them. And most people are looking for powers outside of themselves. And even in a creation process, you'd think, well, that must be a creator up there creating everything down here. So it's all about up and down rather than inside and out. And so you missed the boat there. And then with the Big Bang Theory, that also leaves us in the realm of just physics alone. A great explosion, like from splitting of an atom. So it's all about power, and only on the physical level. And so we know that creation and destruction are ultimately unreal, that there's no way to destroy anything because it was never created in the first place. It was just projected, and then it gets withdrawn. So if you replace some of these old, outmoded, outdated philosophical and scientific quandary makers with these philosophical axioms of India, then you're on better footing. And karma, the law of karma, or let's call it the god of karma, as Vivekananda called it, would be one of those things you'd want to think very deeply about. Just cause and effect, basically, is what karma means, but you can put that into the realm of people's actions and then their reactions. That's usually where you put the principle, the relative principle, because it's not an ultimate, it's not an absolute principle like Brahman, which is free of karma. But it's something that has to do with our relative free will, our choices. And there's a lot of talk about choice in Christianity. That's one of the things which you'll find brought out by the teachers of that religion. And as if there's almost a silent agreement that there's no such thing as free will, because when you surrender your will to the divine will, that's the only will that exists. That's the only free will there is divine will. But you're going to have to put yourself into that atmosphere of divine will by becoming one with the Father, or becoming perfect like thy Father in heaven. We would translate heaven as being a transcendental realm, not a heaven of the ancestors. So karma would be something that you'd want to think very deeply about, and it would be something that would prove itself to have gotten you in the situation you're in now, and something by which looking at and neutralizing, or at least attenuating, diminishing, through practices like meditation or classes on Dharma and contemplation on the teachings, and even karma yoga, which we will look at. If you did action in a correct way, that would be a way of expunging karma. So this would be something you'd want to look at to neutralize, because there are beings who are living in a karmically neutral position, and we've met some of them, our teachers. And it's a very wonderful thing to see a person in that condition, like Arjuna saw Krishna in the Gita, for instance, and how we saw beings like Jesus and Buddha and other great souls that manifested in the different religious traditions of the world. Before there were even religious traditions, we saw these free-moving souls who epitomized akarma. So one of the teachings in the Gita, again, karma, vikarma, akarma, see how not to act, how to do higher karma, and how not to get caught in these lower strains of action and reaction, which start out bad enough, but then get exacerbated by brooding on the effects of negativity that come from action, until you're in a deep quandary about who you are, where you've come from, how to act, how not to act, and unable to really free yourself. Know the truth, and that shall set you free. So I'm just saying, beyond the relative law of karma, there is this truth that is very straightforward, very obvious, but you have to qualify yourself to comprehend it, to apprehend it. And so that, therefore, the study of karma should be taken under the auspice that it's a relative law. But if most people are living in relativity, then this relative law is really their God, and they don't know it yet. Because if you study the traditions of India as we've been doing, you find that there is no God in the universe. In fact, there's no God in any of the universes, not even the inner universes. God is not in space and time, and all these inner universes live by space and time. If your dreams are heaven, which is a good correlation to make, then you're living in a sort of elongated time when you go into dreams. You're not so aware of how much time passes or how little time passes. The images appear to you and disappear, and then you wake up and you're in a solid universe. You go back into a subtle universe again the next night. So if you're going into these heavenly realms inside, because the kingdoms of heaven are within, then you're supposed to look within, unless you're a wiener. As we were saying before class started, the Guru wiener is talking to the Shisha wiener. You see that, and the Guru wiener saying, "Never look within. You don't want to see what's inside of that." See, so there are some very impure things inside the wiener. So unless you're in that condition, then you're going to want to be an exception to the rule. But otherwise, these inner worlds are made up of consciousness alone, but that condition is that the consciousness is conditioned by the mind, and we know that there's a gross body, a subtle body, and a causal body, and these are all conditionings that are subtler and subtler as we move within. Dream goes into deep sleep goes into Turiya, and the traditions of India have always been very clear about how consciousness loses its weights like a hot air balloon dropping its sandbags, and goes higher and higher, or deeper and deeper in this case, until finally these conditionings drop away and it's just one with the Father. The raindrop, say the hailstone, has fallen into the ocean and is now fully dissolved there. The mind stream has dissolved into its source. So there are people who actually practice this every morning and every night. They dissolve everything back into the source. And they'll do this in meditation, then they'll go to sleep and do it too. So if you can accomplish it in meditation, the dissolving of everything, then you can also see how going to sleep at night is also dissolving that very same mind stream. And you can compare those two methods till your dreams become radiant meditations, as one song in India sings. But short of such a high flight of realization or insight, there's another reason then why to study karma, because in that kind of a practice, your karma would begin to let go its hold. As Swamiji says in this beautiful song of the Sannyasin, let go thy hold, Sannyasin bold, say Om Tat Sat Om. So you're supposed to dissolve all these things that you see, taste, touch, hear, and smell, and the experiences that go with them inside. Why? Because your consciousness is identifying with seeing, touching, hearing, tasting, and smelling, and earth, air, fire, water, and ether. Therefore, the experiences are collecting in those tattvas, in those principles. So you have karma existing in water because you drowned. You have karma existing in fire because you cook your food on it. You have karma existing in air because you breathe it or get suffocated. You have karma existing in your senses because you see, taste, touch, and smell, and so forth. So the karmas collect around the tattvas, the principles. They don't collect in the soul. The soul's free, always, ever. And that's why Brahman is not in the universe. It won't get conditioned. It can't be made into a form. So all of these things are needful of saying, so that when we study something like karma, we don't begin to believe we're karma bound. The thing about studying karma is to actually realize the opposite, is that you're not bound by karma. That karma happens in nature, not in yourself. So the problem with studying something, like studying Maya, is that Maya will make you think like it's real. All of a sudden you'll be saying transformation is real, when never the case ever was true, you see. Transformation is false. There is no change in reality. There's only seeming change in relativity. So it's this seeming change in relativity caused by karma and desire and attachment and all these teachings that have come out of India, Samkhya, Yoga, Vedanta, Buddhism, so forth, that have caught people in this trap of samsara, believing in their actuality instead of looking at them and saying, I tend to doubt that now. See? I think I will draw back from that. I think I will not attach, I will detach. And I think I will not participate, I will witness. And the longer periods of time you can detach and witness, the more this karma will let go its hold. It's clinging to you because you think it's real. And that's why Jesus said, go and sin no more, or resist not evil, because you're resisting something that's not real, but because you're resisting it, it tends to look real. You're giving it energy, like giving a ghost energy, you see. Ghost is just a phantom of your imagination, but you start to believe in it, and all of a sudden it takes over your whole life, and you're obsessed with it. So that's the case with every little thing in Maya. Well, how about that Maya, huh? It's the case of everything there in Maya. Maya is name, form, time, space, and causality, and that fifth element is cause and effect, means karma. So we want to look at karma today in a kind of tour de force of some of the karma charts we bring out at least once a year, if not more often. And but we want to segue from last week too. So I brought one last chart on mantra, which is a very important one, which just got its facelift a couple days ago, turned into a color chart. Like I have 350 of these Dharma teaching charts now, which are available now on a website coming up. And you can have these on your wall if you like, or order them and learn them, and hopefully teach them to your children so they will know about the relative laws of karma and how to deal with it, do certain practices to alleviate karma. So this particular chart is a good one to segue out of the teaching of mantra and into the teaching of karma with. Next week we'll segue out of that, or those two, into the teaching of purification. Sadhana basically is what we mean by purification. It's something that you do with the mind, in the mind, to attenuate the source of activity, where activities came from, karmas. So you would use certain purification techniques to actually neutralize or alleviate or cut down, diminish your karmas. And when those karmas begin to let go their hold, you'd begin to see your true nature again. You'd see the light, as they say, or you'd hear the divine sound within you. And so if we want to look at the source of mantra, which we were talking about, remember last week we were talking about how words are so impregnated with Shakti power, that even letters of words have this power inside of them. And so if we were to, and we looked at Sadakya's six realms of teachings that had to do with deities, worlds, bhuvanas they're called, alphabets, words, mantras, and phases of time. And basically how all of that has been linked together by the Tantra Darshan of India into a fine system that's very comprehensive. And so just to remind your mind of that from last week, if we wanted to go to the source of all of that, then we'd want to go to this, in the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was God, and that would be this great bijam, Om. We friendly, it's okay, we spell it O-M, and think of it that way, but philosophically correct, really, to spell it A-U-M, because A-U-M has the triputis attached to it, you see. So A would be, for instance, like your waking state, and this is how Advaita Vedanta would teach it. U would be your dreaming state, M would be your deep sleep state. So now you're thinking about, if the Word is in the beginning, and it was with God, and it was God, as Jesus told John, then you're thinking, wow, that must be a very powerful thing to be at the very beginning of all this. So you're thinking in terms of origins and beginnings, which, just between you and me, are unreal. They don't exist. They're, again, Maya, foisting its idea of creation, preservation, and destruction upon you, when really you're birthless, transcendent of life, and deathless. You're Atman. Your Atman doesn't engage in life, ordinary life. If you say the word eternal life, then yes, you could connect that with Atman, or the Great Spirit, or the Divine Soul with a capital S, and then you have a case for that. Otherwise, it's a movement, and divine reality doesn't move. It's actionless. It's beginningless. It's timeless. It's deathless. So we always have to keep that in mind as we study it, and it will become more in mind when you trace everything back to a bijam like Om. So AUM is a good way of saying. So let's look quickly at this before we segue into karma, and you can see that there are probably the two greatest seeds as far as words and meanings that give rise to world objects and so forth later on are Om and Hrim. So you can see those. This chart is titled that, Om and Hrim, the two great bijam. Bijam means a seed, and these are the seed of all seeds. You might say there's a watermelon, and then there's a bunch of seeds in the watermelon. Well, Om would be that watermelon, and all the other things that are possible, more watermelons, that is, more worlds and more things, would be to come out of that main bijam, or that fruition called the watermelon. Somebody actually wrote an email to me the other day and said they didn't understand the pumpkin chart and the watermelon analogy. So I was trying to explain that to them as a metaphor, as an analogy. But the mind has this many seeds in it. All the worlds are in the mind. They're all seeded. And the seeds have become fructified out here now. And that's why you're going to turn around in dreaming and take them back to the inner stage and back to the source in deep sleep. We're taking the seeds back, or taking the fruit back to its origin, which is in the seed. So if you talk about Om and Hrim, you're talking about the bijam for Brahman and the bijam for Shakti, is how the Tantricists would say it. Om is transcendent, Hrim is all-powerful, and that power expresses itself through intelligence and divine knowledge. So just looking quickly at that, say here's a quote from Divine Mother herself, who is the manager of that Hrim bijam, as she is the container of all of that. And from the Srimad Devi Bhagavatam, it says, one should go into a region where there is no speech or thing spoken, absolutely free of dualities, Akanda Satchidananda. There, with Om, meditate on that highest flame of consciousness. In this rare meditation, great beings have destroyed ignorance, realized their perfect nature, and established identity of the jiva, that's the embodied being, with Brahman, the impersonal reality. This is my highest self. So Sri Durga, the goddess, is saying this in the Srimad Devi Bhagavatam, her own scripture. So some really precious quotes from Divine Mother in this one of these 2 or 3 mother scriptures that only come from India. You don't find whole scriptures for the Divine Mother of the Universe in any other religion anywhere. So this is very important that we have a source for Shakti or Divine Mother reality that's actually been brought into the spoken word, the written and spoken word, so that we can hear her great wisdom coming straight from that source. So she's the source of the 2 bijams, you see. And she and Shiva, if you look at it tantrically, if you look at it Vedantically, it's Brahman and Shakti. So Shiva and Shakti, or Brahman and Shakti, very powerful. Sri Ramakrishna said they're like fire and its power to burn, or water and its wetness, or like the great seed and its potency. So that is my highest self, she says. So it says, go into the region where there is no speech or thing spoken. That's the silence that is within you, that you'll hear in deep meditation. There's even songs written about it that are very beautiful in India. Jatone hridaye ko adarini shamamake atane hridaye ko adarini shamamake mantuidak arami deki mantuidak arami deki arjano ke nahi deki jatone hridaye ko adarini shamamake. So Kamalakanta, one of these great Bengali devotees of the Mother, who is the poet of the Mother and likes to sing her great wisdom, says, O blissful mind, awaken to the enchanting vision of Mother Shama by opening your inner eye of wisdom. Upon perceiving her form enshrined eternally within your heart, withdraw into that sacred chamber of ecstatic love and behold her there in secret. So, as we're saying here by this first quote, go into that region where there is no speech or thing spoken. You see. So Kamalakanta would read the Srimad Devi Bhagavatam, he'd want to put it musically, and this is how he would say it. He goes on to say, abiding in that exalted condition, that is inside in silence, where there's no thing spoken or nothing heard, remember that the ordinary mind connected to the 5 senses cannot enter there. So if you try and go inside and you take the ordinary mind and the 5 senses with you, they won't be able to go there. What does it remind you of in Shankara's teachings? Om yata vacho nivartante aprapya manasa saha ananda brahmana vidvan nabibeti gutas janeti, he says in the Viveka Chudamani. That one Brahman which speech and mind fall back from, unable to comprehend it, the one who understands the truth of that Brahman sheds fear and doubt for all time. And so it is. So it's always been the case and always will be the case, Shankara is saying, is that they've realized this great Mahashakti in the shrine of their hearts. And both this quote from the Srimad Devi Bhagavatam and this beautiful song pretty much puts it in truth. Jatone hridaye ko adarini shamamake. So if we were to take the words of these great beings literally and seriously, then we'd want to look into the bijams. So here's Om as a Sanskrit symbol. See the quote under there. From Adya Shakti issues the first letter A, and it produces you and expands. So Adya, it starts with A, doesn't it? And Adya also means primal or beginning or original or authentic. And so from the Adya Shakti, this original Divine Mother reality, Mahashakti or Mahamaya, comes the word A, and then that will expand into U and then into M. So everything comes through that process. And you can see here other triple designations, can't you, side by side. Like under A is Brahma, Lord Brahma. Don't confuse it with Lord Brahman. Brahman is the imperishable, formless reality. Lord Brahma is the projector, God. So basically, that's also talked about. Yo Brahmanan vidadati purvam, yo vai vidamscha prahinohi tasmai, tam mahadeva atma buddhi prakasha, mumukshurvai Sharnaham Prapadye. A beautiful quote from the divine scriptures that says basically that one formless reality who projected Lord Brahma at the beginning of a cosmic cycle and who delivered the Vedas unto him, who is the eternal, immortal bridge to immortality, see? And who is faultless, partless, actionless, and divine. I go for refuge in that formless Brahman who turns our understanding to the light of the Atman. So Lord Brahma is the one who's delivered that the Vedas at the beginning of a cosmic cycle, which should tell you that these cycles are going on all the time, like cycles inside of cycles and so forth. So that means everything is beginningless, middleless, and endless. Even though there are beginnings and middles and ends to it, it all cycles all the time. And those who get tired of the merry-go-round, get a little dizzy and want off, they'll transcend the whole cosmic process. They'll go beyond Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva and merge themselves like a hailstone in the ocean. So you can see here, AUM means Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. One meaning for the word Om, or if you want to sing that, you could go Guru Brahma Guru Vishnu Guru Deva Maheshwara Guru Eva Param Brahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Deva Maheshwara, which is Shiva. Who is Shiva? So that's one way of understanding the word Om. Another way is the immanent, the transcendent, and the absolute. Three worlds, isn't it? Here is the immanent, the transcendent would be in our mind. That's transcendent of forms, that is of physical forms and solid things. And then the absolute is even transcendent of that. So from the infinite, the finite has come, and being infinite, only infinite remains, as one of the peace chants tells us. Purnamadaha, Purnamidam, Purnat, Purnamadachate. So that's a very pregnant sloka or mantram out of that's come out of the teaching of Om and Hrim. It's got the wisdom of Mahashakti in it, in Hrim, and it's got the transcendent power of Om in it. So all of these great mantras and slokas come straight out of the word like everything else. Waking, dreaming, and deep sleep, we talked about that. Speech, life force, and mind. Mother, father, and guru. Remember, Shankara sings that too. Namrityor na shanka, name jati beda, pita naiva me naiva, mata majanma. Chirananda Rupaha Shivoham Shivoham Om. So you end with Om, begin with Om, A-U-M, it's all there. And in that case we're talking about mother, father, and guru. Namrityor nashanka nami jati beda. I have no birth, I have no death. Why? Because I don't have a father and a mother. Pita naiva is father, mata ma janma. Mata is mother, janma is birth. So I never had a death or a birth. Because I never had a father and mother. All of that's in Maya. It's constantly taking place in Maya, and I'm always the witness of Maya. I'm transcendent of that. Feminine, masculine, and neuter, so the three genders also represented by A-U and M. Activity, balance, and inertia. That's one word you want to know in Vedanta called guna. Yeah, the three gunas, characteristic and peculiar to Vedanta philosophy. You don't find it anywhere else. And if you want to put it in scientific terms, activity, where were we here? Balance. Activity, balance, and inertia, yes. So that was the third to the last. Second to last is past, present, and future. So you have to put the phases of time in there, and transcendent of time. Remember how we talk about that. You get beyond into the Svara of Om. So there's the A, U, M of the thing, and then there's the Svara that's not connected at all to the actual. It's separate from the letter. That Svara is, of course, Turiya, or beyond waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. So the symbol itself is very important, just to see it. But then to hear about it, and to know it, and to meditate on it, and realize it as the source of all projection, that is the source of all origin, then is to be well ahead of the game. And many great philosophies and teachings have come off of that kind of knowledge, special knowledge. Past, present, and future. That's why we chant Adihi Sa Samyoga Nimitta Hetu. Paras Trikala Dakala Pidrista. Paras Trikala, three phases of time. Dakala Pidrista, the seer of the three phases of time. So if you're a knower of Om, you've connected A, U, and M together, and then you've understood that past, present, and future also go together, and you transcend the three into Turiya. And then you could name yourself Swami Turiyananda, if you like one of Sri Ramakrishna's devotees. Finally, what's gross, what's subtle, and what's causal. So we want to call that like Stula, Sukshma, and Karana, the three casings, or sheaths, or shariras, or however you want to put it. Therefore, you can understand your three bodies and the three worlds that go with them. All these connections are made through a great bijam like Om. The final quote there, after Shravana, Manana, and Nididhyasana, there's another nice triputi for you, to hear, to contemplate, and to realize, right? After those three, she says, my devotee becomes fit for absorption in the spirit after understanding the meanings of the separate letters discovered in the seed mantra of Mahamaya. Well, that's nice. I get myself a segue right into the seed mantra of Mahamaya, which is below the dotted line. This is the bijam hrim. So it's in the nature of divine reality to want to express itself, the Tantras say. So there has to be something that's going to bring all of this knowledge into form. Like we were talking about that in Sadakya last week, right? How these 5 kalas were the intermediaries to bring to connect formlessness to form. Remember that? Sadashiva and Ishvara and so forth. These are beings that will help consciousness get out of its formless state and express itself in various forms. So it's an agent, it's a medium, it's a matrix, if you like. And so ha-ra-i would be how you would separate hrim, like you would separate a-u-m. And of course, m would be a fourth matra in this particular bijam. So that's the quote there is where Icha Shakti, Jnana Shakti, and Kriya Shakti all meet and merge. So there's another Triputi that would even go inside of that. That is the three powerful matras there, or teachings, inside of Divine Mother's will, her knowledge, and her activity. We could sing about that too. Shakale tomari icha, icha mai karatumi, tomar karma, tumi karama, loke bale kariyami. Ami jantra, tumi jantri, Amigar tumi garani, Amirata tumi rati, Jemi chalo temi choli, Shakale tomaricha, Shakale tomaricha, Shakale tomaricha. Beautiful song, one of Sri Ramakrishna's favorite songs when he was living, by Raja Rajchandra. And it says basically, O Mother, you cause all to happen by thy own supreme will. Icha Shakti. Truly, you are the self-willed one and the savior of all living beings. All work belongs to you, others only call it their own. And to further illustrate, he goes on, I could sing those verses, but he says, you trap the powerful elephant in the mire, yet cause the lame man to scale the highest mountains. On some you bestow the highest bliss, while others you hurl into the worlds of suffering. O Mother, I am the machine, you are the operator. I am the house, and you are the indweller. I am the chariot, and you are the charioteer. I move, O Mother, as you move me. I speak as you speak through me. So, a good musical example of this whole Sadakya teaching we were looking into last week, and the presence of Mahashakti, or the divine intelligence behind everything, who could take the word Om and produce all of this out of it. She gives Lord Brahma the power to project, gives Lord Vishnu the power to sustain, and gives Lord Shiva the power to dissolve, the permission to dissolve it back in these cycles. But she herself remains free of the cycles. She is the supremely self-willed one. Beautiful ways in which these teachings are put forward. Now, there you can see what some of the assignments of gross form, subtle form, and causal form, Vaishvanara, Taijasa, and Pragya, right out of the Advaita Vedanta teachings and Mundaka Upanishad and so forth, and Mandukya Upanishad particularly. And so that's Ha-Ra-I, is gross form, subtle form, and causal form. And then 5 elements, fourfold mind, and formlessness, also Ha-Ra-I. Also physical body, 5 tanmatras, and the non-vibration or equilibrium is a way of expressing Ha-Ra-I in Hrim. And under subtle form also falls the cognitive organs and the 5 pranas. So you can see pretty much the word Hrim would contain all of these tattvas that we found to be present in the Samkhya system of Lord Kapila and the Shaivite system of the 36 tattvas and so forth, all the way back to the original Adi Shakti, or Adya Shakti, as she says up here. So there you can see some of her other precious bijams, and I have a whole chart that on these that I haven't colorized yet, and I didn't bring in this case, but Aim, Krim, and Klim, also very powerful bijams. To segue out of this into karma, so we can get some into the subject of this class, but to segue out of mantra, she says in the Devi Bhagavatam here, Srimad Devi Bhagavatam, after balancing the breath via pranayam and cognizing the differentiated states of the bija mantra and what they signify, then meditate on that bijam and mentally dissolve the gross body into the subtle body into the causal body, and the causal body into the turiya state of Hrim, symbolized by the matra M. So this is where Ha, Ra, I, gets explained in the end, how important it is. So you dissolve all of that back into M, and before entering samadhi, she says, focus upon me, the supreme deity, the luminous, self-effulgent goddess, who is one with Brahman. So, just like Krishna says in his 6-part process of meditating on him and on Brahman before passing from the body, she also has a similar way of giving that teaching out, because of course she delivered the Vedas unto Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva at the beginning of these cycles, so that this knowledge could be proliferated and propitiated and produced and then withdrawn back into formless reality. So she wants you to meditate upon her just before entering samadhi. It's like getting to the Father through the Son. You get to the reality through the Divine Mother. So that is a quick run through of the 2 bijams, Om and Hrim, you see here. Now, let's move on to karma per se. If you want to come out of this chart and segue nicely again into this transmuting the poison of relativity into the nectar of immortality, it's a very fine chart which we like to bring out once in a while, tantric in nature. Well, there is Lord Shiva responsible for that Ha-Ra-I, that is the M at the end. It's going to dissolve everything back into divine reality, into formlessness. So all the tattvas will be taken back in, all the karmas that were associated with the tattvas will be neutralized, otherwise you couldn't get back into formlessness. You know how Sri Ramakrishna used to describe that. Said if you have a needle, then you have a thread, and you're trying to pass this thread through the needle, it will not go if there's even one little tiny fiber sticking out. So, you're trying to get this done and getting impatient and so forth, and so you take a magnifying glass that can see closer than your eye, and you look at the end of the fiber. Even after you've wetted it, there's this one little fiber that's unseen, that's sticking out, so it can't fit through the eye of the needle. So Sri Ramakrishna gave that story to indicate teachings like that. In order to go into formlessness, you're going to have to dissolve all vestiges of karma and all vestiges of form, or any attachment to form and to name and to time and to space and to earth, air, fire, water, and ether, and to tasting, touching, hearing, seeing, and smelling, and so forth, back into Brahman. See? So back to this chart again, you can see how important it is to do this work. And then she says, after that you can enter into samadhi. Think of me and enter into samadhi. Otherwise there's distractions in the way, or little vibrations, you see, that aren't acceptable to get into the gates of immortality. That's beyond vibration you're talking about, beyond bijams. So you can see some of the assignments here over here. There's Lord Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. And there's the 3 worlds, gross, subtle, and causal, which are also there. And there's Om itself on his Tandava drum. And there's the seeds of power there, sacred bijams, that are all like the Rudraksha beads around his neck and around his arm. And there is collective karma itself up here. That word hala hala is like the sound that the snake Vasuki made when it spat out poison, when the suras and asuras got it and wrapped it around the mountain and used it as a churn in the oceans of waters of existence, which is a misuse of Shakti power on the Sura side, and well-intentioned use of Shakti power on the Sura side. That is, the divine beings want to get this power for the good of the worlds. The Asuras want to get it for their own selfish purposes, to dominate. There's a lot of that going on in this world. Asuras wanting to get power and use it for domination. That's a misuse of that self-same Shakti power, which is pure in itself, but is being used for a wrong purpose. So that's why you're going to have to purify, and in order to purify, which we'll get to next week, some of the methods, you're going to have to understand the philosophy. If you're taking the path and walking the path and you want to get to the ultimate goal, then you have to qualify yourself by knowing these systems. Yes, you can take just one of them if you like, or you can come to my class and get everything over a period of time and know what to choose from. You can dissolve the mind stream, you can take an ishtam and a mantra, you can study the Jnana Yoga and practice neti neti, you can deify the worlds of name and form and worship the Divine Mother. Go on and on. You can take Samkhya philosophy and know the tattvas to be able to get in and out of the body. All of these systems have been given in India from time out of mind, and they will continue to go on in cycles, and those cycles will be ended by him. So sometimes we sing to him about that. Lord Shiva. When we would sing something like this from Tulsidas. Shankara Mahadeva Deva, Shankara Mahadeva Deva, Shankara Mahadeva Deva, Sevaka Sura Jake. Pashamanga Shisha Ganga Ayana Vahana Ati Prachandra Gauriya Ranga Sangha Ranga Bhanga Jake Shankara Mahadeva Deva Shankara Mahadeva Deva Shankara Mahadeva Deva Sevaka Sura Jake. Beautiful offering by Tulsidas, a name which needs no introduction east or west. So he'll sing about Shiva or he'll sing about Ram. Shri Ramachandra Kripalu Bhajamana Harana Bhava Bhayadarunam. Or he'll sing about Shakti, like he just said here. He says, behold Shankara, the incomparable Lord Shiva, who is served and worshipped devoutly by gods and by demons and by human beings as well. Behold Shankara, the great Lord, the supreme deity. The white ashes of mature renunciation cover his entire body like a second skin, while the sacred river Ganges cascades, you can see it up here, cascades out of his matted locks. Nandi, the bull of stability, stands near as his divine conveyance. And the auspicious Mahashakti attends upon him, full of subtle power. Om Kali. See? Tied to a knot of his hair, as it were. See? And this whole three worlds comes out of her unmanifested nature, Prakriti, the shaft or staff of this trident that he wears. So the whole thing is rich with symbology, this tantric image of Lord Shiva. And if we want to get out of the subject, or be hard to leave it behind because it's so connected, of mantras and so forth, to get into both deities and karma, and how he transmute karma, hala hala, then you'll see how he does that. This churning of the ocean of milk, you might see here we're churning everything. We're churning oceans to get oil and energy. We're churning the earth to get minerals. We're going on churning space with windmills. There's all sorts of churning going on, you see, even nowadays. And that's producing certain effects. And so there's like, the other day I saw something interesting that somebody was saying, one Christian preacher was standing up and saying, we're ruining the environment. And another Christian preacher was saying, it's not your business. You should just get people to love Jesus. And so the other Christian preacher says, basically, but you're saying that Jesus wants us to pollute the earth and destroy it? And the other preacher said, sure. And the other preacher said, how can you say that? Because he already did it once, 40 years and 40 days and 40 nights. He already destroyed everything. It's going to be destroyed again. So it's a very different look now at this whole thing about eternal existence. So in a sense, even from that perspective, there's nothing you can do to harm this earth. It's all contained in a bijam that's imperishable. There's nothing you can do to harm divine reality. And you can't even harm physical nature. How many planets are there in space? You're going to try and harm them all? You're going to try and harness all their power? They're going to be reborn again through many lifetimes, trod on different planets. It goes on and on forever, eternally. And not one thing happens of any merit. The only thing might happen of any merit is somebody actually got out of doing karma. And if they got out of doing karma, they'd have to get out of doing bad karma, get out of doing mixed karma, and get out of doing good karma. Because good karma leads you right back into what the gods are into. See? Right use of power. But power is still power, and it's not transcendence. It's not enlightenment. It's not formlessness. It's not nirvikalpa. It's not asampragyata, which is seedless. It's not nirvana. It's not satori. It's not pure conscious awareness. It's not timeless, deathless consciousness. What about all those names? It's not satori. It's not Allah. It's not Brahman. It's not the Almighty Father. It's not the Great Spirit. Those are beyond seeds and imperishable. That's why I chanted at the beginning of the class. Take the Upanishads like a great bow. Get your mind sharpened by thoughts on reality alone. Point it toward the target, imperishable Brahman. Release, penetrate the mark. Be free. Dhanur Grahitva Upanishadam Mahastram. The great Upanishads will tell you how to do that. So, rich with symbology, as we're saying, and it gets us into this topic about karma. Now, when the churning is going on, and poisons are coming up, and good things are also coming up. See, this is what's confusing. Oh, I'm using Shakti in the right way, therefore I can get cures to diseases, and I can get various things that are going to benefit people. I can get electronic appliances, I can provide homes with electricity, I can dam rivers and do. So when you're doing things that bring about good fruits, there's always these negative activities that are connected to them, invariably. It can't be any other way. You can't have good without bad. You can't have advancement and progress without its opposite, regression and so forth. That's the way the world is, and Lord Buddha probably put it as clearly as it can be in the First Noble Truth. There is suffering. Pleasure, then, is a kind of suffering. So if you're getting things out of the churning process that are good for you and good for others, you might want to wait 40 or 50 years and see how good they really are. See how that medicine was supposed to cure something maybe gave you some other disease, and so on and so forth. Or see maybe how cancer maybe should have never been cured because it's the perfect way to keep the population down. That's a horrible thing to say, but this is what happens. But you have to understand that death is unreal in this to these great beings, Jesus, Buddha, and so forth. Death is not real. We will be, in the end, what we were in the beginning, bubbles, forming, rising, and dissolving in Mother's infinite ocean of eternal bliss. That's how they look at death. We will be, in the ending, what we were in the beginning. That is, at the time of destruction, any kind, our death, or a whole cycle's destruction, or a whole culture's genocide, whatever it may be, that won't change the fact that we were in the end, we will be in the end what we were in the beginning, bubbles forming, rising, rising and dissolving in an eternal ocean of consciousness. So if you want to take your body-mind mechanism as one bubble and project that, you're doing it in the ocean of Shakti. That's a perfect ocean of bliss there. If you turn it into an ocean of suffering, that's called karma. And you'll do it by certain actions which are your own fault, your own doing, have nothing to do with Brahman or her. And therefore, you bound yourself. And therefore, you have to free yourself. And a savior, if you're going to wait for a savior to come, that could take hundreds and thousands of years. And if you didn't listen to the savior when he or she first came, and followed their instructions, then they're not going to be coming again for some hundreds of years more, and you're going to have to be reborn in those different lifetimes and deal with your own karma. There are ways of getting free. It's called self-knowledge. The seers, you have a Gita, which we'll be studying along the American River in a few weeks. And there, Krishna says, the seers really, and the gods really praise the one who gets himself free by his own self-efforts. They praise that. Sadhana, it's called. You get yourself free by your own efforts. It's not like saying, oh God, please help me. Come to me, I'll wait, pleading at the door. You get yourself free. And then the Lord opens the door and says, well done, you finally got the right idea. The right idea is what? You were bound, you got free? No, the right idea is that you're always free. You dreamed yourself to be bound. So she didn't step in and tell you that because you hadn't learned that lesson. Because you had to do it through knowledge, moderation, austerity, and veracity. All constantly cultivated. That's how we started out the class today in that chant. You had to do it that way, you see. So you bind yourself and you free yourself, while Lord and Mother remain always free, waiting for you to figure this out. So this is why we study karma, is because we need to know about its existence, and we need to take the God of the universe and replace it with the God of karma, because God is not in the universe, only our own actions and their repercussions are here. Krishna makes that clear in the Gita. All action, all transformation, all suffering takes place in nature, not in your soul. I don't know who could put it any clearer than that. That to realize it means you have to say, oh, I see, all this is taking place in nature, then I better step back from nature, because nature is the form-producing machine. And it'll do it for hundreds and thousands of years in cycles, and then more cycles added to that eternally, called samsara. So I better step back from that and look at my formless nature, which is ever free, never bound, which is birthless, deathless, timeless, spaceless, and free of karma. But we've been saying this for a long time, and if you're just meditating and that's the only practice you're doing, and then you're going out and acting, and you're having karmas from that, and you're taking them back into your meditation and having to dissolve them, then you're caught in this loop called action and inaction. So you better find out the source of your activities, learn the particular yoga that's best suited to neutralize that karma so that your meditations will be free and clear. Otherwise you can meditate for decades or lifetimes and never get the real point of the matter, that the self is always free. So the game of enlightenment, in a sense, is called bondage and salvation. But in Vedanta, they always teach you that there's bondage, salvation, and that's a duality, right? But what's the triputi to bondage and salvation? Liberation. Liberation, moksha, is a state always at hand, Shankara says. Doesn't come about by practice, it doesn't come about by grace, it doesn't come about by self-effort and so forth. It's always your true nature. You cannot purify the self through the eight-limbed yoga. You cannot purify the self by bowing at the Guru's feet. You cannot purify the self by calming the mind's vibrations in meditation. Why? Because the self is already pure. Why not step into this arena of light, called Advaita Vedanta, and then take a look at relativity? So it's from that standpoint that we look at karma, and we're not coming down into a risky realm. We're more at risk by not examining it. We're more at risk by looking at the sources that are keeping us from getting enlightenment in meditation. We have to examine the tattvas where the karmas exist that are keeping us from getting enlightenment in meditation. So let's look at karma before the end of the first half of this class, and so that we can examine it from all sides now. I'm going to show you two charts that are very nice to put side by side, and in their colorized versions. Let's look at, they're quick studies really, especially this one, that the seers have given us, and particularly here's Sri Ram, and here's Sri Ram. If you want to go to the masters of karma, then Ram and Krishna, or Ramakrishna, would be the best sources to go to find out about the nature of karma, because they're going to tell you, study it from a distance. Don't study as if it were actual or real. It's a relative law. It's something you've stumbled into, and with your ancestors, with the celestials, with the gods and goddesses, right, who are constantly involved in this back and forth of power and misuse and use. So you're going to have to step back from all of these dances of Maya that are going on in front of your five senses, and look at what the seers have said about it. So first, here you have it, Sanchita, Prarabdha, and Agami. I'll leave Kriyamani out of it for now, because the way they teach it traditionally is three karmas, three types of karma. But Sanchita means accumulated, Prarabdha means operative, Agami means potential. So, and you've got this karma from past lifetimes. Now, the intelligent beings will realize this. The lack of intelligence in beings at the time of their birth is because they've forgotten what they learned in their past lifetime or lifetimes. The presence of intelligence in beings who are born in this body is because they remember what they learned in their past lifetimes. So you can trace ignorance and knowledge, and particularly intelligence, straight to the fact of forgetfulness or remembrance. You can connect that. So beings who are wise, they remember what they've experienced in their past lifetimes. This is no real secret. Krishna says it to Arjuna in the Gita. Vivasvat, I learned everything from him, Arjuna, but he lived thousands of years ago. Yes, I've had many lifetimes, Arjuna, and so have you, but I've remembered all mine. So when you begin to remember through meditation what you experienced in a previous lifetime, then that's called the appearance of your own intelligence. Then you know, like we're talking about Adi Daiva Vidya, the original knowledge given by Kapila to all of these beings. Who is it, what did Krishna say about it in the Gita? Of all seers, I am Kapila. Of all seers, I am Kapila. Why? Because he gave the original Adi Daiva Vidya, the 24 cosmic principles by which consciousness gets into the body and leaves the body. The path of the sun, by which they go never to return, and the path of the moon, by which they go and return again. However way you want to put that, you can just superimpose all those 24 cosmic principles right in the path of the sun and the moon. It'd actually be a nice chart. So Sanchita karma is accumulated karma from past lifetimes. That's why some people are born with problems and other people not. That's why some people are born fools, others are born geniuses, and so forth and so on. That's not God's fault at all. God had nothing to do with it. It's their own karma that they brought into this lifetime from a previous lifetime. It wouldn't be there if they had neutralized it in a previous lifetime. So if you're still attached to the ancestor realm, if you're still attached to deity worship, if you're still attached to rituals and rites, and you're not getting attached to revealed scriptures or to illumined gurus or to seers and saints or to Ishvara, then there's a reason for that. If you have a hard time surrendering yourself to a higher power, there's a reason for that. Of course, I'm pointing out certain things through which the West is having a hard time with right now. Self-surrender to higher principles, to higher wisdom. And they're so stuck in this idea of Big Bang or creation theory. It's not explained very well in the tradition. So there are other ways to work your way out of this wet paper bag of ignorance, present-day ignorance. You can box your way out of that. You see, make a hole. That's a teaching by Sri Ramakrishna. Just make a hole and see the light beyond it. So we've also seen Sri Ram as an expert archer and so forth, and he can shoot an arrow, and bring down a deer at a long distance, you see, if he wants to, usually by Sita's command because she's Shakti, you see. So we're using the bow and arrow here in terms of the three karmas. Past karma would be arrows being held in the scabbard. So he's got this scabbard, you see, in his back, and there's arrows there. So that's past karma. The soul will take those and put them in the bow and shoot them again to create more karma. So when you come into life, you have these arrows of karma that you brought from your Sanchita store, and you might put those in the bow again and release them. But what is the wiser thing to do? Because if you do that, they'll get loosed from the bow in this present lifetime. That's called present karma, and that's called prarabdha. Interesting word, prarabdha. So basically that's your present karma, and you took that arrow from a last lifetime and you put it in the bow and you let loose. That's got to have a mark, right? That's headed in a certain direction. So in this present lifetime, there is no way you can avoid the karma that's coming to you from that act of releasing karma. You have to work it out. If you don't, then it becomes future karma. Arrows being loaded into the bow. See, future karma. So you're really just continuing to do this process of release, load, release, load. And this is giving rise to, because of desires and attachments, and this is giving rise to these three kinds of karma. Forbidden karma, mixed karma, and hopefully for you, no karma. There's also a problem with kriyamani, which I like to bring in, imminent karma. So you come into this lifetime, be a karma you created before, you start working on the karma that you brought from the past lifetime, and as you do so, you create more actions, and those are fires that are springing up. You see, it's a contemporary expression. Too many fires I have to put out, so I can never really get around to my original karmas, which brought me here, to fulfill them or neutralize them. We don't talk about this always in the most negative form. We also say that karmas can be neutralized, and that happens by dharmic fulfillment. You would put this together with some other teachings in the mother tradition, like the four fruits and so forth. So you do things under the dharmic mantle, then your karmas slowly get expunged, and you can live them out in one lifetime. Sometimes Buddhism says 3 lifetimes. So that would be somebody who has some karmas that really need to be worked through, and if they don't get around to sadhana, they probably won't work through them. They'll need several lifetimes to do that. Usually 1 lifetime to recognize you have karma. I mean, think about this. As in your present state, you have to recognize this teaching and realize it. See? Oh, I see. Now I get it. I better start working. And that's what happened to illumined souls in a previous lifetime. They woke up. Said, oh, I think I'll do this work now so I won't have to do it later. And then they got born again, and wow, we see, well, what happened to your karma? Well, I think I took care of that before, and now I don't have to worry about it. God had nothing to do with it again. It wasn't that they were graced and you were cursed. It's that they started working. But they had to realize that karma was a relative truth in them that was keeping them from getting to their goal. The Buddhists have a very simple punya papa teaching around it. Punya means merit, papa means demerit. So you just stop doing demerit. Of course, you're going to have to find out the difference between karma and akarma and vikarma, as Krishna teaches in the Gita. And once you find out the difference, then you stop doing that which has been impeding you all along. And then punya comes, merit. And with merit, then you can rise out of even do-gooding, you see, because that leads you to heaven. And you want enlightenment, not another land like heaven. Heaven, earth, and hell. You want off that triputi. And you want to get to enlightenment, or the realm of the Father, or Brahman. So in that case, you can see there are four kinds of karma, types of karma here. Sanchita, Prabdha, Kriyamani, and Agarma, which is accumulated, operative, imminent, and potential. And so now you've known, now you've seen, now make a decision in your own mind. Who said that? Shankara. See? Now that you've seen it, now you've come to know, now make the right decision in your own mind and get free. Pass your time contentedly and be free. There's no reason now not to know what karma is about, and it will take you deeper into it here. But let's look at these four shades of karma, which are connected to these four types. The four shades are black, black and white, white, and colorless. So black is, of course, negative doings. Black and white is mixed good and bad. That's very confusing kind of karma. It's almost worse than black, because black is obvious to most people, negative doings and so forth. But when it gets mixed, where a good thing turns bad and a bad act turns good, then you have a problem, you see, because it confuses your understanding. How somebody can rule the world and get all good things and go to their death and never suffer karma. Well, it's because it's stored up. See? They have sanchita karma that they're not working out in that lifetime, so they're storing it up. So the next time you see them in the body, they'll be having to suffer that karma that evil doings they did to other beings. So it all comes out in the wash, as they say. What comes around goes around, and what goes around comes around again. Whatever they're saying nowadays, it's true, but you have to understand it in terms of cycles, and not just in terms of one lifetime. If you look at it in terms of one lifetime, you'll come up with a premature conclusion about it. I won't read the quotes there. You can see them yourself at the break when we show this chart, or the students here present in the ashram can come up and look at them at the break. Let's just say that there's white karma too, and it's positive or good karma. And the only thing we might say here is the world is bound by actions other than those performed for the sake of sacrifice. Do thou therefore earnestly perform action for the sake of sacrifice alone. So there are many people who are doing good actions, but they're doing them to get good things for themselves and for others. But none of it's done for sacrifice, sake of sacrifice. Very seldom do you see a person who knows the laws of karma yoga, and of course we'll look at that after the break. To do something as sacrifice would be to put yourself in the company of Adiyagya Daiva, the supreme sacrificer, Ishvara, God with form. That's the one who does the sacrifice and suffers the effects. That's very interesting teaching. Human beings don't really suffer because what's here is unreal. and their minds are in an unillumined state. Their bodies aren't pure. They're doing impure actions. So none of that can be real. So then how can they really suffer? You have to be conscious to suffer. And that's what Ishvara is, fully conscious and fully aware that he, she will come in a form and take on the sufferings of others. Many traditions teach this. Some of them may be rather obsessed with it, but better to actually understand it and make yourself one with the Father. And surrender yourself fully to Ishvara and become selfless and do every act for sacrifice. Do it all for others. Give up the ego's preoccupation to do things for itself. Just give it up flat out and start doing things for the sake of sacrifice alone. This is what he advises. Who's he? Krishna. Who is Krishna? Ram. Same being in two different cycles. And then there's colorless karma. Now this is what really needs to be looked at. It's really the Advaitic side of it, of this teaching, because karma is a relative law, but you can see how it can connect to non-duality. That is, there are beings here whose intellect are unattached everywhere, who have subdued the self, from whom desire has disappeared. That one, by renunciation, attains the supreme state of freedom from action. And they can do it even while they're in the body. Let's just say a quick example would be Sri Krishna on the battlefield at Kurukshetra. He did not engage. In fact, he tried to mediate that war for years. And the Kauravas wouldn't listen, you see. So the Pandava clan was willing to listen and mediate, couldn't bring it together, so Krishna had to back off, let the war happen, which is the way of the world and the way of ignorant human beings. He himself just ended up detached, not participating in the war. So he himself even indicated in the midst of the worst of circumstances of a grand war of that age, how to be detached and how to be free of karma, not engaging. So that's what Sri Krishna says in the Gita there. Desire has disappeared because Sri Krishna said, I have no desire for being here. I'm only here for loka sangraha, the good of the worlds, highest good of the worlds. So he has no desire, and the self has been subdued. He's not doing anything for himself anymore. That's ended a long time ago for him. He's doing everything for the sake of others. And his intellect is unattached everywhere. See? There's no attachment. Even though he's a king of a great city, he's got many followers, and he's got all these divine lovers, and he's got all these people who are students, disciples. His intellect is unattached everywhere. Only attached to God, you might say. The last quote here, and we'll have a break, is from Shankara. It's how beautiful it is to put the teachings of Vaishnavism and Shaivism together. They are together. They're the same beings that come again and again. There's no need for contrast or argumentation. The teachings are the same, they're just appealing to slightly different temperaments, as is always the case. So Shankara says, the fire of knowledge destroys that which has previously been done, and what one has yet to do. But what is done it cannot destroy. But those who stay close to Brahman are never affected by these three. They are Brahman without qualities. It's really beautiful that he took these three karmas at a later age, studied the Gita, and made his commentation on the Gita, and said that these three karmas, this is how to deal with them. If you gain knowledge, that will destroy that which has been done before. So knowledge can destroy your past karma. He says, and what one has yet to do, agami, that will also get destroyed. But what has already been done, arrows shot out of the bow already, sorry, it cannot destroy that. It has to be lived out, which is why so many people are here living it out. We just hope they'll get over it in 1 to 3 lifetimes and get free. So how do you do that if you've got this prarabdha karma, but you've done, the fire of knowledge has burnt away your past karma, and your future karma has been neutralized because you don't have any more ignorance, then what do? For the prarabdha karma, stay close to the fire of Brahman. I've even used this in the case of people who come to me with, say, challenged and children and so forth. You see, mentally challenged and so forth. They're probably not going to recover in this lifetime. Their minds aren't going to be in that fine shape. So I say, well, the best thing to do is to keep them close to love of the parents. Keep them close to the teachings. Keep them close to the teacher. They might not be able to comprehend it or purify their minds in that lifetime, but once they get out of that, out of that body and have another lifetime, the last thing that they'll remember was the love of their parents, the love of their guru, and the teachings they were around. Just like somebody cold remembers the heat of a fire. So stay close to the fire of knowledge, keep them close to the fire of Brahman, which will mean a little bit of knowledge about formlessness. So the destruction of karma will lead to understanding of formlessness, and that's called nirvikalpa samadhi, or seedless samadhi, asampragyata. So let's look at this chart after the break, and thank you for your kind attentions. We welcome you back to the second half of the second class in this three-part series. Last Sunday, mantra. This Sunday, karma. Next Sunday, purification. So a lot of my class titles, series titles lately have been Triputis. I've realized I'm falling into that. But it's a good way of bringing forth the Dharma teachings in issues that are pertinent to this day and age. Sometimes Advaita Vedanta teaching it, will go right over the head of most people. That is, if they're interested or happen to be near in the periphery of those teaching it. Like I said earlier, the teachings of morality and immorality are leaving people a bit cold nowadays because they're attached to judgmental God and the black mark of sin and hell and damnation and things which are untenable and unacceptable to Western and Eastern thinkers nowadays. Those who have a higher intelligence, who are going towards teachings like karma and leaving divine reality pure and perfect as it always is, and then trying to raise themselves to it. Vivekananda said, two tendencies in people's life: they try and pull divine reality or God down to their comfort zones and make it all amenable here, which is the work of the ego, or some try to raise themselves up to that Brahman or God. Unfortunately, most people take the first route. So trying to bring that formless reality down into form is never a good idea. And the only way you can really help that be a healthy move is to study qualified non-dualism. Because there is a platform between duality, which is good and bad, pleasure and pain, heaven and hell, and this non-duality, which is be thee perfect as thy Father in heaven is perfect. There's an in-between state which is called Dharma. And those Dharma teachings in multitudes can be given out to people who are aspirants, who are devotees, who are sincere practitioners, who are seekers, who are people who are desirous of gaining enlightenment in this lifetime, acolytes, votaries. There are many levels of beings in different religions who are looking toward the Dharma nowadays, particularly as it's reflected through the Vedas and the Upanishads and the Gita and some of the other revealed scriptures of India, to find answers for questions which have not been available to us for hundreds and hundreds of years, maybe longer. And so those who gather and collect around that central pillar of Ishvara and seek the Dharma and are beings who want to heal rifts that are of a philosophical nature, because if the mind is disoriented, what Patanjali called Bhranti Darshan, it has sick thinking, or uneven thinking, or imbalanced thinking, or improper thinking, philosophically speaking, then of course that's going to trickle down into the mind, and the ego is going to get a hold of it, and pretty soon it's going to come into life full force, create karma. And so that's why this level of qualified non-dualism is a different direction. It would be like we were talking about at the break, is that you can go towards colorless, or you can go away from kriyamani karma that's springing up all the time, and you can show how it's connected to future and therefore deal with it. Or you can take it back to Sanchita and see where it came from. And so as in any good teaching in India, the connections are the most important thing, not just taking one subject or one aspect of one subject and inspecting it. You have to make the connections for people and sammanvaya, bring it all together into one great thing, like Sri Ramakrishna did with all the world religions. From that more holistic, and when I say holistic, I mean physical, energetical, mental, philosophical, emotional, psychological, spiritual holism, all the elements of our being, then we can get a good look at this light of Brahman, which attracts us, like a bonfire attracts a moth. And therefore we can move towards that fire of purification, which was where we left off with this quote by Shankara when we ended the first half. The fire of knowledge will destroy those karmas, and the only thing it won't destroy would be karmas that are already upon you, arrows that have already been shot from the bow. You cannot call them back. People are suffering or enjoying, or suffering and enjoying those right now in this lifetime. So to watch and stand back and see how that's happening in individuals, in countries, in races, in cultures, and then also look at it inside of yourself is a fuller picture that you want to introduce to your mind, so that it is not narrow anymore. It's really got this more universal perspective that it wants to adopt and adapt. And so when we talk about karma of 4 types or karma of 4 shades, we can also talk about dynamics of karma yoga. So we get to the solution for karma before the purification class next week. We're jumping a little bit early into knowing about some of these things that Sri Ram and Sri Krishna both talk about so well in the Ramayana and Adhyatma Ramayana and Bhagavad Gita and Uddhava Gita, these great songs that they sing. So here we are, this famous quote which I've used in more than one chart: "This vibrating castle of karma, conjured by the mind in Maya, is fated to come crashing down about the ears of all and sundry. O seeker, take care, walk the rare royal path that leads up and out of Maya to the land of enlightenment." So we have Sri Ram saying those kinds of things and telling us without any doubt that we need to seek this land of enlightenment and be very careful about our actions. Again, you could put it in songs by beings like, again, Tulsidas, which we sang a song by him last time. Etani vinati raghunandan se dukha dandva hamara bita hoji. Etani vinati raghunandan se dukha dandva hamara bita hoji. Dukha dandva hamara bita hoji. Dukha dandva hamara bita hoji. Dukha dandva hamara pita hoji. Dukha dandva hamara pita hoji. Etani vinati raghunandana se. This is my prayer to thee, O Raghunanda. Raghunanda, the head of the solar line, this line that came right out of the sun of knowledge, and then went on through ages producing great souls like Sri Krishna, and all the way down to people today who say, I can trace my lineage all the way back to the solar line, and I connect myself. Those are my real ancestors, and I hope to include my other ancestors who are heaven seekers in to that land of enlightenment, just like he's saying here to us. Make sure we seek that, be careful of Maya, and seek that. So that means you would probably be very careful of action, therefore you're being very careful of accumulated karma and sanchita, and how it would manifest in other lifetimes. It's just a matter of course how you think if you're a seeker, and you're saying yourself, I have not gained the enlightenment I'm looking for yet, so I have to be very careful of actions. So here's some bullet points we'll go through quickly. Sri Ram says, perform duty meticulously, but without laying claim to its fruits. Perform duty meticulously, but without laying claim to its fruits. And know that action abides with the gunas of Prakriti, while the Purusha is inactive. I was mentioning that in the first half. All activity, good and bad, and so forth, takes place in nature. You might have noticed. Repercussions also come from nature and your reactions to things that happen in nature. So the Purusha has a responsibility to step back and be careful of that. But to know, essentially, even if they make an error, they should know that the Purusha remains pure and perfect. And then just regroup, reorient, and do that action again, or similar action, or all action from then on, do it more carefully, more meticulously, and be free of the karma that comes from it. Execute all action fixed in yoga, being even-minded in success and failure. These bullet points are both there in the teachings of Sri Ram and the teachings of Sri Krishna. Refrain from producing any fruits of karma through selfish motivation. Below you see the 3 grades of karma, and we'll get to that, but we have to know that there's also the 3 gunas in play here. That sometimes you feel lassitudinousness, and it's, in a sense, no fault of your own. You've come upon this cycle, and you've been affected by things around you, and you haven't mastered the gunas yet, and you're not able to stay perfectly in sattva, balance, all the time. So your mood is going to be changing like this, and so if you do actions in that particular mode, you get the fruits thereof. And if you don't know that and you go on acting, then you don't understand what happens to you, and it makes you upset and imbalanced. If you do understand what's going on, then you can correct. And be careful. Maybe not do actions in slothfulness, not do actions in restlessness. Only do actions in sattva. It sounds a bit impractical, but it will help teach the seeker to remain in sattva, so that they won't suffer these karmas, and these karmas won't turn from lifetime to lifetime into different types, as we looked at in the last half. So each one of these bullet points has a whole line of commentary that can be given on it. Across the board, remain steady in the face of both loss and gain, impervious to their influences. Sometimes tell people about a student of mine who was a stockbroker. So I'd see him one month, and he was very happy, driving a BMW, had just made $50,000 on some stock market deal. See him a couple months later, in the same BMW, very unhappy, ask him why. Well, I just lost $75,000 in the stock market. So I say, well, fine, you're involved as a businessman, but businessman can also be dharmic, and wealth can also be turned to a positive end. So all these, it's not like a matter of all money is evil, kind of throw everything out the baby with the bathwater style. So you're going to have to learn how these changes in Maya come about, and how you deal with them and turn them positive, or forbear them, wait. So you stand back from Maya and watch it. And of course, he got that idea after a while, and then he became less, let's put it this way, more impervious to the changes of that stock market. And I didn't hear a lot about it after that, but I wished him well in that endeavor. But he had to be careful of that whole world. And so back and forth it goes, loss and gain, and there you are, dedicated to the Divine Mother of Wealth, like Lakshmi, and you're putting it all in her hands and seeing how it all works out in the end, or not. And you're blaming God for it, or you're blaming yourself for it, and the gunas are just functioning in Prakriti, and you're on one side of the equation. On the other equation, your Purusha is standing by, pure and perfect, never affected. But there you are in the middle, right? The ego, it's called. Reacting and so forth, and not learning the lesson, or having to forbear ignominiously. Nice word. Now, let's try this penultimate bullet point. It's a quick run through the dynamics of karma. Good to get a little commentary on it, because you can read it, but if you sit in the Sangha with the Guru and study the Dharma, it brings it more forceful into your awareness, and even to be reminded of it, because a lot of what the Dharma entails is remembrance and reminding. It has to be repeated many times for the mind to finally hear it in a certain way and say, I will master that. Time for that to fructify. Do not disregard or reject obligatory work under the pretense of inaction. So there are beings both of both runs, monastic and householder, I would say, and both impoverished and wealthy, that are guilty of this. They decide basically that, since all of this is unreal, they hear some teachings and they have not digested them, and their minds are premature, that all of a sudden they decide they're going to renounce some action or some duty, some responsibility, and do it prematurely and immaturely. So Sridham and Krishna are saying, no, don't do that. Do that which is obligatory, what you're called upon to do, and then learn the proper lessons, how to do it in the right way, how to stand back from both good and bad fruits, not attached to the good or react to the bad. Remain even. Do all work as worship, as an offering to the Lord dwelling in all beings. Work as worship, labor as love. That's a teaching Swami Vivekananda brought back to us here in contemporary times. Put it in ways that cause us to remember how to work and how to labor. And that's a good segue actually into the next chart. But we want to look at these three grades of karma. So you can see in these two charts how I've put together teachings of karma from different scriptures and different great beings, and how it covers four types, four shades, dynamics of karma, and then the three grades. Let's look at the three grades and work our way through another chart then. It is needful to discriminate action, inaction, and forbidden action. So there's vikarma, forbidden. Acts done out of anger to inflict violence. Probably some of the worst tamasic acts. Ignorant actions done at an inauspicious time, like random acts of kindness or something. See? No, do conscious acts of kindness, please. Otherwise, there's just acts of good stupefaction and acts of bad stupefaction, as Lord Copula taught us way back in India. So you want to make sure to be careful of that. That's a false superimposition of your mind over karma. Perverse actions committed against the Dharma. That's never be a detractor of the Dharma, always be its contributor, is how I told that to people in the past who have betrayed their path and so forth. Always, never be a detractor of the Dharma, be a contributor to the Dharma. And make sure that you are in all cases, and that your fealty is 100% to Guru, Dharma, and Sangha, and that the teachings are digested fully, and that you get that under your belt in this lifetime, and have mastered that. And then you'll see these people who are coming back, fully dedicated beings, and with no karmas to have to untie, no karmic knots to untie, whereas you'll see other people on the path, but trying to untie karmic knots, and sometimes failing that. It's quite obvious if you look from the standpoint of witness on this field of karma, that's what's going on. People involved in it don't see it that clearly. You have to be a little bit objective about it, as a guru would be, who is teaching or sharing this over decades with a society like the Western society. Or like Swami Vivekananda did when he came here in 1893 and shared some of these teachings with us. Let's look at the elements of karma. So there's vikarma, karma, and akarma, right? So karma is just self-motivated. What's its problem? Actions performed for selfish reasons alone, and without the care of anyone else, or maybe without the care of even what might happen to somebody. Dam up a river upstream so your kids can have a swimming pool. Downstream they're dying of thirst. So a good action has a bad result somewhere, and you've done this for a selfish reason so your children will love you or something, and basically a bad result is there, or a bad karma is there. Maybe the result hasn't even come forward, and then when it does, you don't know where it came from, and you say, why me? What's the mantra of the worldly? Why me? What's the mantra of the struggling? who am I? And what's the mantra of the attained? I am. So which mantra do you want to have? Why me? Or who am I? Or I am. Actions done for reward or out of expectation. That's a real stumbling block for many people. Expectation. You can't really talk about karma to somebody who's engaged in a profession that's successful, even though good and bad results are coming. It's very hard for them to say, well, you might give up your expectations for things, and it doesn't make sense to them. People who are in business and so forth. I've heard some of the swamis say that coming to America. It was very difficult to talk to that man and talk to him about selfless action and not expecting fruits and all that. That was the whole reason he was into his job. And it seemed like the society was conscioning it, and that's what he should be doing. Everyone was like patting him on the back and lauding him. Oh, good, good, you see. But then maybe he wasn't satisfied later with the arena of works. And then where does that go to, and how does he respond or react to that? Actions which are attended by attachment. That would be, whereas earlier we saw it was tamasic, you did actions in slothfulness. This is beginning to look like actions done in restlessness. So you're attached, you see, and that's a kind of restlessness. I want this, see. And that's rajas, no matter how it might mask itself. And you want it right now, maybe. Or even if you want it in the future, it causes you to brood on the future and take away the precious presence of the self which exists beyond the three phases of time, which we said in the first half. Three kaladarshi. Actions engaged in for glory, honor, and power. That's definitely rajas. Many people are into that too. We shift over from the business quarter to the military quarter and to the political arena. You see that this becomes more important. And if you shift it into the educational department, it would be intellectual glory that runs the thing. So any segment of society you look at, you'll find that there's some form of rajas that's powering. That's that Shakti power that we talked about earlier that's so important, being used or misused for the wrong purposes, or in the wrong way, or in a mixed way. We go to war to try and bring peace, Swami Nikhilananda used to say. Our founder's guru, like Sixton's guru. We go to war to try and bring peace, and that's Maya. So there are many forms of that going on. So action engaged in for glory, honor, and power, vainglory, the Tantra calls that. It's one of the evolutes of Maya. Or one of the 10 characteristics? No, I think it's one of the evolutes of Maya. So it's vainglory. And beneficial action abandoned due to difficulty. And so this is the success-failure thing. So if it succeeds, I should do it. If it fails, I should give it up. So worthy actions come along that are difficult, and you don't see them through. See? And you have to discern if they are worthy or not. So it's a three-part kind of decision process and conclusion that you have to go through, and it's very difficult to do that if your mind isn't clear, like if it's in tamas or rajas. And so you have to get clear. That's why people maybe they say, well, that act I did, I didn't do it right, or I had the wrong expectations for it, but how do I do it better next time? I need to sit down and be quiet. I need to look, meditate inside, contemplate the world of action. Look at my job, look at myself, look at what's important. I need to breathe. I need to be silent. Like she told me, I need to go into a realm where there's no words and nothing spoken, where all is silent. Because even if I don't get the answer there in silence, when I come out, I'll be much better for it. Just maybe the real purpose of the whole thing is just to expose yourself to the light, because the mind will become clear. It's not how I got clear, or if I will get clear or not. It's that if I get close to the light, I'll come out with clarity. And so that's a more Advaitic way of approaching the thing. But you have to do a search and practice for it. This is called meditation or contemplation. Didn't she say, Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana, my devotee will qualify themselves for higher intelligence if they perform those and dedicate it to the Ajja Shakti. I do this for you, Mother. Let's look at akarma, moving along here, which is selfless, and trace it back to the colorless here on this other chart we looked at. So this is a nice D mantra, doings devoid of desire and design. So we want to have this activity that we do or don't think we do or don't claim responsibility for, that are devoid of design and desire. So I'm doing this work, it's not like I'm doing this work and I don't care what happens. That's lackadaisical. That's lack of attention. That's not meticulous. But you're not doing it for any selfish gain. So if you add that into the mixture, all of a sudden the thing becomes pure. And becomes what?
Pure.
Yes. And therefore you want it to be free of desire and design. Act successfully subjected to the fire of yoga. My favorite of them all. I mean, it's back here to Shankar's great words down here. Just subjected to the fire of knowledge or the fire of yoga. That's how Vivekananda dealt with everything. And he wasn't dealing with his own karmas. He was already perfect. Nitya Siddha, Sri Ramakrishna called him. So what he was dealing with was a whole mass of karmas in the collective mind and of different countries. His own India plus America and some European countries and so forth. So basically he wanted to take on this whole mass and as best as he could clarify it with his great power that Mother had given him. And therefore he used to say that about the fire of yoga. I'm perfectly content even up in the Himalayas with nothing, walking barefoot in the snow in the winter, because I have the fire of yoga within me. So that has to be understood. If you can actually have that fire and then subject all your acts to it, that's probably as you do it, but also as before you do it, but also as you do it, like Kriyamani, then karmas that are coming up spontaneously are dealt with spontaneously. It's marvelous, really. Sri Ramakrishna had a story for that. He said, an expert dancer never takes a wrong step. Of course he takes wrong steps, but they're only wrong in his mind, and he quickly turns them into right steps, and the audience doesn't know a thing about it. He says, in fact, maybe some of the best steps he takes are wrong steps that he didn't intend to do. We know this, like I know this about music, playing along, and you get into some gray areas of whatever you're playing, and all of a sudden, you're improvising, and all of a sudden you come up with this spontaneous lick or melody or phrase, and realize that it's all there spontaneously within you. You just have to open up to that art. So as you get better and better at that in the 4 yogas, which is a chart I also brought, we might not have time for it, then you'll know that this spontaneous way of doing is superior. Also, acts engaged in while thinking, I do nothing. Of course, the great master of that in this age was Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. He could say that. Others tried to say it but didn't really realize it. But he said, I do nothing, Mother does everything. He was 100% given to her, so therefore it was true in his case. So no ego was there, and all these bullet points that we've looked at, and all of these great elements, teachings, were fully realized in him, and that was also very spontaneous in his case. Past master, they call that. Not just a master, but a past master. We look to great beings like that as examples of how to do and how not to do. So you would have to try that out, wouldn't you? I'm going to do this act, but I'm not going to think I'm doing it. It's sort of like I'm going to meditate, but my ego's not going to be doing the meditating. But whatever yoga level you put it on, you have to experiment with it. And you'll probably be pleased with some of the outcomes, that something new will happen, something fresh and spontaneous like that will happen. And that will fuel your spiritual life and inspire it. You have to be working with that all the time, because there are karmas in the way, and some of them are good, some of them are bad, and some of them are mixed. Sometimes good karmas get in the way. We were talking about that at the break. It's like I win the lottery. So everyone wants to win a lottery. But if you have a spiritual life that's going on, and you don't have a lot of money because you're engaging in your spiritual life, all of a sudden you win the lottery. Some worldly thing happens like that, and it completely puts you off the track of your spiritual life, and maybe years to get back on, if you ever do again. Changes everything. So you might want to just stay with the original intention and go on moving towards your intended goal, and be very non-reactionary, very detached, and so forth. Actions free of hope and desire for possessions. Actions done by the mind steeped in wisdom. That's very much like subjecting it to the fire of yoga. Fire of yoga overall, but wisdom is a particular path called Jnana Yoga. So you study the scriptures, you reflect on the teachings, Svadhyaya style, Father of Yoga says. And by doing that, sometimes even unbeknownst to you, the karmas in the mind are getting attenuated. And one day, like the great songwriter, you write a song that says, "My delusion is gone, gone, utterly gone. I woke up this morning and it was gone, gone, utterly gone." So you keep doing this kind of yoga, which is your path, and watch the mind shed its karmas until just mere tendrils are left, and memories, like burnt ropes, Sri Ramakrishna called them. They can't bind you anymore, but there's still subtle memories of these karmas in your consciousness, until finally even those, the wind comes and blows them away, like it would a dried up rope, blows it to dust. And finally, work undertaken for the sake of sacrifice. That, of course, we looked at more deeply in this chart when we talked about works that you were doing that were colorless, and then just only for the sake of sacrifice you were doing it. So the last quote here is very fitting by Sri Krishna. The threefold fruits of action, good, bad, and mixed. That's going back to karma, vikarma, karma, and akarma. The threefold fruits of action accrue after death to all who are attached, but no karma attends to those who renounce. So you might say renunciation here is more connected with actions than it is with objects. Objects are fine. And most yogis who come from caves even tell you so. Well, it's all right if you have objects. I had objects in my cave, and I didn't even give them a second thought. Like Pavari Baba was living in a cave. The villagers came and left food for him. They left him on these metal plates. And so he'd take the food and throw the plates into a corner of his cave. So they piled up there. So once he was out answering the calls of nature, some thief came into the cave and saw these plates, started gathering them up, and ran off with them. But he ran into Pavari Baba coming back from the woods, and Pavari saw him with these plates, and the thief started running, and so Pavari Baba ran after him. And finally caught up with him and said, wait a minute, you left some back there. I actually don't want them, they're in my way. See? So, I mean, you can have things, but you have to realize that they get in the way. I object to objects. They're in the way. You see, so if they in the right place, the right time, and so forth, that's fine. But it's the actions around them that they're pointing out here. You should renounce your way of dealing with objects. Because we know that there are some certain truths about objects. They're empty. They don't fulfill you in a while. You get bored with them. They get stolen. They get destroyed. There's so many things about objects which people aren't taking into consideration. The meaning of objects. Basically, it's because they're shifting particles, changing at a billionth of a second, and they're not real. I mean, you can go everywhere from philosophical all the way down to practical and even to physical. What to speak of emotional around the ownership of objects. So it really has more to do with the cause of the object. You acted to get an object. The object came about because of your desire for it. So you have to go back to the action of desiring, which is in the mind, and then take the object to task. Once you do that, you can live amongst them. Children, wife, friends, cars, and you'll always be wary of them, that's for sure. And you might run into them occasionally and stub your toe. So they are pain-bearing, too. These are things you take in stride. Of course, all-out attachment to them, what's called nowadays materialism, based on sensuality, the five senses, that's, of course, pure ignorance. That's just, who would do that in their right mind? Who in their right mind would take the unreal and claim it to be real, or claim it to be the only reality, and then live and die by it, and form karma around it, based on desire, and then build samskaras on it? I almost brought that samskara chart, but I knew we wouldn't have time. That we can go in different directions with these karma teachings. We can go towards samskaras and the impressions that they create, and we can go in other directions with karma too. In fact, what direction am I going to go from here? Let's see. Yeah, something I really wanted to show, because it has to do with the philosophy of work, karma yoga again. And there are 3 more charts I wanted to present, but we probably will not have time for all of them. I could actually take one of them next week as we move into the purification part of this threefold class, 3 classes series. So maybe I can save one for them. But we can look here at work as worship, labor as love, service as sacrifice. And these are like Swami Vivekananda's ways of expressing pretty much everything. A lot of what we just said right here comes down to those 9 words. Work as worship, labor as love, service as sacrifice, is how I subtitled this chart in honor of Swami Vivekananda. So let's read the first quote here to get us started. Ordinarily, we make ourselves, this is by Swami Advaita, one of his brother monks. And he wrote 2 or more very good books on karma that I can recommend. The Doctrine of Karma and so forth by Swami Advaita. He also came just after Vivekananda came and taught at the New York Center, and carried on the work as one of the original swamis of the 16 direct disciples of Sri Ramakrishna, and so he gave us a lot of keys in his good work. And Swami Advaita says here, originally we make ourselves like machines, laboring without cessation, until at last we grow weary, discouraged, and unhappy. When, however, we realize that there is within us something which transcends all activities, which is unchanging, immovable, and eternally at rest, then we accomplish our daily tasks without discouragement or loss of strength, because we have learned the great philosophy of work. So, beautiful quote from him out of a book that's not very widely read, but I can recommend it, The Doctrine of Karma. And he follows that idea very much, that we should not blame God for what happens to us. As Holy Mother said in her lifetime. Actually, Swami Advaita served Holy Mother for a long time when he was a boy named Kali, before he was a Swami. And so he must have heard her say, we should not blame God for the good and bad things that happen to us. Those are our own actions that bring that about. So I took this levels of work, you see, and put them on a tier here. First of all, there's exacerbated karma. This is going more towards Sri Ramakrishna's teachings and some images that go with each of the stories. I called that the hovel of heinous acts. A hovel is, of course, I can't call it a shanty because that comes next, but it's this hut, as it were, that's in disrepair. And Sri Krishna says, the demonic know not what to do or what to refrain from. I look back here on the other charts to look at vikarma. Bound by 100 ties of hopes, given over to lust and anger, they strive to secure, by unjust means, hoards of wealth for sensual enjoyment. We already visited that one just before we ended the last chart, and it's not hard to understand. This is about two men who were digging, and they came upon a box. So when they saw it, they both started pulling on it and fighting over it. So they pulled and pulled this way and that way, and they were cursing each other's ancestors for generations, and cussing each other and hating each other. They had just been friends minutes ago. Finally, they pulled the box apart, and it was just a bunch of rusty old tools someone had buried. So this shows how people are greedy and attached and living in that kind of delusion. If you stepped one level of karma, you'd have the shanty of selfish works. You can see how this chart pretty much was put forward by putting together these previous charts, because we talked about selfish works in both of them. Once a man took up residence in an old hut. Soon the winds began to shake it. The man remembered that Hanuman was the son of the god of the winds, so he prayed to him. Still the winds did not abate. Next, he remembered that Hanuman was the devotee of Ram, whose younger brother was Lakshman, and he declared, "This hut is Lakshmana's," telling the wind, "Please don't hurt it," as it were. The winds continued. Finally, the man cried out, "This is Ram's own hut." But the winds grew stronger. As the hut began to collapse, the man rushed from the hut with a curse, yelling, "This is the devil's hut." And of course, this describes selfish works. It all comes crashing down in the end. How did he say it? Around all and sundry. So, shouldn't build your house in on any kind of sand that has to do with those kinds of works. Evil, selfish, even duty. We will look at is a midday sun that's burning the very vitals of humanity, as we'll find out. But you can see there. This funny story, this image from the story of Sri Ramakrishna said, a man leaves home, and he goes to work. He gets to work, and because he's late, the workman chases him with a shovel, wants to hit him. And then on the way home, he leaves work because he can't stay there. He runs into the loan shark in the street that he owes money to, and so that man takes off his shoe and runs after him. To get a shoe beating in India is the worst insult. So he tries to go home, and his wife finds out he's lost his job, and comes at him with a broom. So he's not getting any respite or any satisfaction anywhere. In fact, the opposite. So that's the shanty of selfish works for you. The domicile of dire duty comes next. You can see I had some fun with words and images here. And it has to do with recurrent karma. This image is about a woman having to feed her children. And so this is duty as we see it. Swami Vivekananda says, "Do not work yourself out. It is of no use. Duty is the midday sun, whose fierce rays are burning the very vitals of humanity. It is necessary for a time as a discipline. Beyond that, it is a morbid dream." Swami Vivekananda's straight, powerful words to the fact. Notice how it says it's necessary for a time. So he has to explain that by saying, work should lead to knowledge. If it doesn't lead to knowledge, then it's of no use whatsoever. 1,000, 1,000,000 works will not get a person free. In fact, it'll probably bind them more. And that's what's been happening over phases of time, out of mind, as people come back and bind themselves into that one strain called karma, and don't know anything about jnanam, bhakti, or dhyanam, meditation. So she can feed her family over and over again for rounds, over lifetimes, but maybe she should start feeding herself some dharma and then teach it to the children, because that will eventually better their condition. So from good to better to best. You always have to be moving, which means you're going to have to take on a spiritual life, and duty is not a reason to forego spiritual life. Oh, I have my duty. So there's a story about one of our past presidents, Swami Bhuteshananda, who is in our recent journal, although he's passed. Got permission to use one of his articles, and he said he had people come, you see, and bring their children to him in India. And they'd see the President Maharaj sitting there, and the children would go up to him and say, and really admire him. See this man sitting there, you see, in orange robes, and very balanced and very happy and pleased to see them. So they'd ask their mother and father, can we be like him and think about God all the time? And he heard their parents tell them, no, you can do that later. Later, when you're older, you can think about God all the time. And Swami Bhuteshananda then said later, after they were gone, but look at the parents. It's later for them, and they're not thinking about God yet. And they're telling their children not to think about God yet. Holy Mother said, now, while you have the energy, while you have the light of teachings, while you have a guru, while you have a path, now think about all you want to gain. Now's the time, not later. So, putting it off for duty, there could be arguments about this, you see. This is why I'm talking in this vein, because there could be people who say duty is it. You have to have duty. Serve your country. Serve the sick, and you can take it in all sorts of directions. But this teaching of karma has already told you that if you serve people in restlessness, it produces more karma. If you serve people in tamas, then it creates more karma, doesn't it? So you cannot get around this. You have to purify the mind and then work. You can't work in restlessness, and you can't work in tamas, in slothfulness. So you're going to have to find a higher way to deal with this idea of duty, which is burning the vitals of humanity. We could go on and finish the class on that one point, but let's not. Let's look at the castle of charitable concerns. Oh, now we're getting into altruism. We're getting into something that some of us understand better. So there you see the man walking with the weight, you see, the balance. He's got his grandfather on one side and his grandmother on the other, or his father and his mother. His ancestors are balanced there, and he's actually doing his work and serving them. So Lord Buddha says, do not think lightly of merit, saying, it will not come to me. By the constant fall of water drops, a pitcher is filled. Likewise, the wise person, accumulating merit little by little, becomes full of merit. So this is how I mentioned in the first half how punya and papa, the Buddhists, is a method they use for people of more ordinary consciousness who are trying to develop their consciousness to a better degree. It's very hard to get out of the karma from ignorant actions, let's say, and merit is only coming a little bit to them as sattva that appears once in a while. They get a little balance. So what do? They're going to have to increase merit and renounce demerit, neutralize karma, in other words. And so that will be a path for them to get themselves beyond these moderate considerations that people find themselves. So duty and charitable works both we've seen the limitations to them. They need to be transcended if you want to live a spiritual life. And what's coming if you do is the sanctuary of selfless service. You can see there the picture. The man with neutralized karma is this man who's just a wandering free soul. And the quote is by Sri Sharda Devi, the Holy Mother. A flash of lightning is seen in a window pane, but not in the wooden shutters. Only the pure mind can see God in others and serve him there. In such beings, spiritual power gets awakened and liberation is attained. Beautiful words, simple but straight to the point, by Sri Sharda Devi, who is that very Shakti power we were studying at the beginning of this class. In this day and age, as Sri Ramakrishna's divine consort. So a very interesting analogy or metaphor she uses. The flash of lightning is seen in the window pane, but not in the wooden shutters. It'd be kind of hard to figure that out, what she means. So light is seen in the illumined souls, not in the ordinary souls. The ordinary souls are like wooden shutters. They don't reflect any light. The window pane reflects light. See? So you have to look to the seers to get this idea of selfless service from them, because they show the light of God. They know how to serve God. That is, they know how to serve God in people. They know how to, you could put it another way, they know how to serve God instead of people. Back here, aren't they serving people? Duty and charity. They're serving egos. You can see the subtle shift here, but very important shift, is these beings are not serving egos anymore. They're not serving personalities. And Sri Sharda Devi used to say that herself. Give up this personality. Realize your real self. She was always leading you towards that higher standpoint of deeper understanding. It's the principle that's important, not the personality. You'd hear Sri Ramakrishna and Sri Sharda Devi and Swami Vivekananda saying this again and again to people, especially of a Western culture, who did not understand anything beyond duty and charity, beyond altruism. So, very nice shift here shown in this chart. The next image there is of the holy man with completely dissolved karma, and that's the abode of action in inaction. If there could be anything beyond selfless service, or even if it is beyond, because a case could be made otherwise, depending on the character of the person involved, because Krishna is actually doing selfless service in the Gita and so forth, then it's this. From the Svetashvatara Upanishad, there are two birds, closely related and very much alike, which perch on the same tree. One of them eats ripe fruits, the other, however, refrains from eating any fruit and only watches as a spectator. So the wisdom here that's being communicated is of non-duality. This is still seeing a subtle sense of difference, but here you have a being who's completely in a non-dual state. And as I tried to explain earlier, it's very hard to put words to in the first half of this class, is that they're in a state which is beyond birth, yet they're in a body. It's inactive, yet they're doing action. There's all these strange dichotomies involved with a soul like this, and we've had a very hard time understanding souls like this when they've appeared. Lord Buddha, 550 years later, Jesus, and then some hundreds of years later, Patanjali and Shankara and Chaitanya and onward, so Sri Ramakrishna and Swami Vivekananda, all the way along the way. Only some people have understood them fully, and others have partially understood them, and others have misunderstood them. And like people who tried to put Swami Vivekananda in the arena of politics, and he said basically, anyone who puts my teachings in the arena of politics, I say, save me from my friends. To anyone who tries to do that. So his spirituality incarnate, that's how he wants it taken, that's how he wants it presented, that's how he wants you to understand it, and that's how he wants you to get enlightened, because you'll never get any of that from politics. Isn't it obvious? In fact, it happens to be a downward spiral right now we see. And if it does move upward again, it'll go downward again. Just wait and see. So we want a changeless reality, and that's the difference between all four of these domiciles, or these houses, and these two. This is what we want to shift to. And if we can understand that in the great ones and borrow that, make it indigenous to our own field of work, then we're going to be on the best footing. So that is a quick run through this karma yoga philosophy of work. And I didn't realize we'd accomplish it so quickly, but we did. And now I think there's enough time to show you a sort of concomitant chart. In fact, this might get a little bit involved to get into it, so I'm wondering. Yeah, I think maybe I don't want to get into that. We showed it actually a month ago, but this would be something to look for, and would also segue nicely into next week's class about purification, because the four yogas are the religion of this age. That's a quote by Swami Vivekananda. So the religion of this age isn't an ism anymore. Buddhism, Christianity, or any of that. It's sadhana, well plotted out, well informed by the seers and the scriptures, well followed and realized. That's the religion we want brought into this arena, whether it be the arena of works, the arena of meditation, the arena of devotions and rituals, or the arena of self-knowledge. If you put these three together in a synthesis, then you've got the best of all souls as a result. These souls really understand the full implication of spirituality and are the best examples for us to follow, and the epitome of God realization. So we can, actually, in the time remaining is short, but we can look at least at the Karma Yoga section right now before we end, and then take these three as a part of the overall solution as purification next Sunday. So looking at the lower right-hand corner, let's see if we want to do any of the chants, the quotes here, because we can explain this chart quarter by quarter more starting next week. We'll leave these quotes by Swamiji and Sri Ramakrishna to the end. Karma Yoga is the yoga of selfless action. Now you can see it points here, some of which we've seen in the other charts, but we can review them. And here's the quote: "Performing action selflessly and continually while taking refuge in me, by my grace he reaches the eternal, undecaying abode." Because the abode he may be in right now could be all of these shanties or huts or domiciles, and he wants to improve himself. He wants to get better dwellings, better philosophical dwellings. So otherwise, Krishna says in the Gita, he works to realize me and get free of this anicca, asukha, loka. Anicca means changing all the time, non-eternal. Sukha means full of sorrow, no happiness, asukha, not sukha. So asukham, aniccam, asukham lokam. They worship me to get free of this world. It's not said in many religions like that. This world is what you should take on. This world is what you should have. You should enjoy it. You should accumulate it. And, if you can do that dharmically, maybe we have no problem with it. But for those who are seeking absolute freedom, the difference between salvation and liberation, you want to lean very directly and very strongly towards that level of realization and understanding that leads you to formless samadhi, at least to get a glimpse or taste of it. And the hardest way to reach it is through karma yoga, because any act you're doing makes you a separate doer. It's much easier to get into formlessness through meditation or through jnanam. These two, karma and bhakti, keep the sense of separation, even at the highest level, maybe not the very highest level. These two do away with the sense of separation. And so they're often pitted against one another. We have charts on that too, actually, about like the Ko'eula bird. I brought one of them. There's this passive action and inaction side by side. It might be good to look at that next week to see how meditation and action can go together. And so we have that to look forward to next week. So that quote started me off on this commentary. Perform actions selflessly and continually while taking refuge in the Lord. It's very important, because if you don't take refuge in the Lord, you're sailing on the ocean of action without any port, with no compass. So if you sail on the ocean of actions with a compass, which is the Lord, you can always find your way back again to the Lord. So that's how risky the path of karma yoga is. And you're going to have to do it in these special ways. Engage only in obligatory action. Renounce action done for selfish motive. Perform all action with evenness of mind. Do not seek the fruits of action. Detach from all outcomes of action. Perform all work as worship. Utilize all work to serve God and mankind. Work meticulously, but with detachment. Most of that we looked at in the first two charts, the 4 types of karma, the 3 grades of karma, dynamics of karma yoga, and those 4 shades. And so we've got a complete tutorial, is a word I heard recently, a complete tutorial on karma in this one class of 3 hours long. And we'll continue on a little bit in it next week as a segue, and take up some of these other yogas and some solutions that purify us in one lifetime. We want this to happen. So maybe we don't just become masterful in 2 yogas, but in 3, or maybe all 4, because that's how Vivekananda wanted it. He said, the best devotee of the future, in my opinion, would be those who synthesized all 4 of these yogas and realized them equally. Since we have a few minutes, let's take these quotes, which are so sweet. Swami Vivekananda said in his lifetime, I want to give truth, dry, hard reason, softened in the sweetest syrup of love, and made spicy with intense work, and cooked in the kitchen of yoga, so that even a baby can easily digest it. Okay, time for prasad dinner. Let's go. It makes us hungry, but it makes us philosophically hungry to have this, these 4 ingredients, you might say, of this grand repast available to us. So again, you can see what he means. I want to give truth, dry, hard reason. That's Jnana Yoga. Softened in the sweetest syrup of love. That's Bhakti. And made spicy with intense work. That's Karma. And cooked in the kitchen of Yoga. That's Dhyan. See, that's Raja Yoga, the 8-limbed. So that even a baby can easily digest it. And all we can say to that is goo goo, gaga, here in the West. Because we're all babies, and he called us that. So we want to see this kitchen of yoga come forward, and these great offerings made in it. So that's one quote, and just enough time for one more. We'll leave the last one till next week. Let's stay with Swami Vivekananda here. The teaching of the new incarnation, Sri Ramakrishna, is that the best points of yoga, devotion, knowledge, and work must be combined so as to form a new society. You know what the Vedanta centers are called? Vedanta societies. So starting from there, Swami Vivekananda had this ideal that even in the West, we should be able to start something, put down some roots, the underground river of Vedanta coming to the surface a little bit, even in a Western materialistic culture, for the highest good of all beings, just like Sri Krishna did so many millennia ago, and throughout many cycles. So there it is. Yoga would be Raja, devotion, Bhakti, knowledge, jnana, and work, karma. So he had many great sayings like this. This is why he wanted us to know that if we want to give up isms, religions, on their conventional sides, we should go to the new religion of the age, which he was bringing to us now, as these 4 yogas and their synthesis. So we work on them as according to these bullet points. This has been quintessentialized from the tradition and from his own writings, the complete works of Swami Vivekananda. So here, let's end with a chant, a few minutes early, but not early enough not enough time to go into these quotes, these other charts, which we will take next week at the same time, a week from today. Om Tachnayo Ravrenne Mahe Gatung Yagyaya Gatung Yenu Pataye Daivi Swastarastu Naha Swastir Manusebyaha Urdvam Jigatu Bhesajam Sangnawastu Dvipade Sangchatushpate Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. May we make a sincere offering of the small self into the great self. May we always revere the Lord and Mother of all sacrifice and delight in this offering. May divine blessings be upon us. May peace be unto the entire human race. May healing, well-being, and prosperity then also come and abide among us. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, and may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om.